Captain Elias Drake leaned back in the pilot's chair of his battered freighter, the Starling, staring at the endless expanse of stars. The hum of the ship's engines was a familiar comfort, but tonight it felt more like monotony than solace. His latest cargo run had been uneventful, just another delivery to some remote outpost on the edge of nowhere. He sighed and reached for his coffee mug, only to find it empty. Figures, he muttered under his breath. As he set the mug down, a faint blip caught his attention on the radar screen. It wasn't unusual to pick up debris or stray asteroids out here, but this signal was different. It pulsed weakly, almost like a distress call. Curiosity tugged at him. Most pilots would ignore something so faint. It could be a trap after all. But Elias had always been a sucker for lost causes. He adjusted the controls, steering the Starling toward the source of the signal. As they drew closer, the outline of a derelict alien vessel emerged from the darkness. Its sleek design suggested it belonged to the Zenthari, a race known for their advanced technology and fierce warriors. The ship looked damaged, its once gleaming hull scorched and cracked. Whatever had happened here, it hadn't ended well. Elias hesitated. Getting involved with the Zenthari was asking for trouble. They were proud, territorial, and didn't take kindly to outsiders poking around their affairs. But then again, nobody else seemed to be answering the distress call. If there were survivors, they'd die without help. "Guess I'm doing this," he said aloud, shaking his head as if trying to talk himself out of it. After suiting up, Elias boarded the alien craft through an exposed airlock. The interior was eerily silent, save for the occasional groan of metal shifting in the cold vacuum of space. Lights flickered weakly along the walls, casting strange shadows that danced across the floor. Every step felt heavier than the last, weighed down by both gravity and dread. Then he saw her. She lay slumped against a console, her luminous skin glowing faintly even in the dim light. Her delicate features were framed by strands of silver hair, and intricate patterns shimmered across her arms and neck. She was unmistakably Zenthari, and unmistakably injured. A gash marred her forehead, and her breathing came shallow and uneven. For a moment, Elias froze. This wasn't just some random survivor. She radiated an aura of importance, like royalty. But there was no time to think about that now. Kneeling beside her, he checked for signs of life. Her pulse was weak but steady. Carefully, he scooped her into his arms and carried her back to the Starling. Back aboard his ship, Elias patched her up as best he could. He wasn't a doctor, but years of solo piloting had taught him enough first aid to keep someone alive, at least temporarily. As he worked, he couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just made the biggest mistake of his life, or maybe the most important decision. When she finally stirred hours later, her golden eyes locked onto his with a mixture of confusion and gratitude. "You saved me," she whispered, her voice melodic yet tinged with pain. "Yeah, well," Elias replied, scratching the back of his neck awkwardly. "Don't mention it." Little did he know, those 3 simple words would bind him to her, and her people, in ways he couldn't possibly imagine. After weeks of deliberation, and a fair amount of arguing, Elias reluctantly agreed to accompany Silvera back to her homeworld. She insisted it was the only way to explain the situation and possibly find a solution that wouldn't involve marriage or servitude. "If we face this together," she said, "maybe we can convince them there's another path." Elias wasn't so sure, but he didn't have much choice. Staying away would mean abandoning her to face the consequences alone, and something about that felt wrong. Besides, his curiosity got the better of him. What was Zenthari society really like? Could he navigate their world without getting himself killed, or worse, married? When they arrived at the capital city of Zenthar Prime, Elias was awestruck. The planet shimmered beneath twin suns, its surface dotted with towering crystalline spires that reflected light in dazzling hues. Hovering transports zipped between buildings, while crowds of Zenthari moved gracefully through streets paved with iridescent stone. It was beautiful, but also intimidating. Everywhere he looked, People stared at him with a mix of fascination and disdain. Silvera led him to the royal palace, an imposing structure made of translucent material that seemed to glow from within. Guards flanked the entrance, their armor gleaming with intricate designs. As they approached, whispers rippled through the crowd behind them. A human. In the royal palace, the tension was palpable. Inside, the grandeur only grew more overwhelming. Massive halls stretched endlessly, adorned with floating orbs of light and murals depicting ancient battles and celestial wonders. Courtiers dressed in flowing robes glided past, their luminous skin marking them as pure-blood Xanthari nobles. Elias felt painfully out of place in his patched-up flight jacket and scuffed boots. They were ushered into the throne room, where a council of elders awaited them. At the center sat Queen Valithra, Silvera's mother, whose regal bearing commanded respect. Her eyes locked onto Elias immediately, sharp and calculating. Beside her stood Lord Kale, Silvera's uncle, a tall, imposing figure with cold eyes that sent shivers down Elias's spine. Silvera stepped forward, bowing respectfully before addressing the court. "Mother, esteemed counselors, I present Captain Elias Drake, who saved my life after my vessel was damaged. By our laws, he has fulfilled the life debt ritual, binding us together." A murmur spread through the chamber. Some nodded approvingly, while others exchanged skeptical glances. Queen Valithra raised a hand for silence. "This is unprecedented," she said, her voice calm but firm. "Humans are not part of our traditions, yet the bond cannot be ignored." Lord Kale stepped forward, his tone dripping with disdain. "Unprecedented indeed. Are we to allow outsiders to meddle in matters of the royal bloodline? This human is unworthy of such honor." Elias clenched his fists but forced himself to stay calm. He knew losing his temper wouldn't help. Silvera spoke up quickly, defending him. "Captain Drake acted out of compassion, not ambition. To dismiss his actions would dishonor everything we stand for." The debate raged on, with factions forming around the room. Some supported Silvera, believing her survival was a sign of destiny. Others sided with Kale, viewing Elias as a threat to Xanthari purity. Through it all, Elias remained silent, feeling like a pawn in a game he barely understood. As the session ended, Silvera pulled him aside. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "This isn't how I wanted you to see my world." "It's fine," Elias lied, forcing a smile. "Just tell me one thing. Are we winning?" Her expression darkened. "Not yet. But don't worry. I won't let them force you into anything you don't want." For the first time since arriving, Elias believed her. Whatever happened next, he realized she was just as trapped as he was. And strangely, that thought made him feel less alone. The galaxy erupted into chaos as Cal's rebellion escalated. With his schemes exposed, he declared open war against Silvera and the royal family, rallying anti-human factions to his cause. His message was simple but effective. Humanity was a threat to Xanthari purity, and any alliance with them would doom their empire. Across Xanthar Prime, cities burned, and skies lit up with the fiery trails of starships clashing in brutal combat. Silvera stood on the bridge of her commandeered flagship, the Celestial Dawn, staring at the tactical display showing the battle raging around them. Her expression was grim but resolute. "This isn't just about us anymore," she said quietly, more to herself than to Elias. "If we lose, it won't just be my throne. It'll be peace itself." Elias watched her from across the room, his heart heavy with admiration and fear. She had transformed before his eyes, shedding her doubts and embracing the mantle of leadership. Yet he could see the weight pressing down on her shoulders. He stepped closer, placing a reassuring hand on her arm. "We're not losing. Not while I'm still breathing." She gave him a small, grateful smile. "Then let's make sure you stay that way." Their strategy hinged on disabling Cal's command ship, the Shadow Blade, which served as both his fortress and nerve center. Without it, his forces would crumble, but reaching the heavily fortified vessel required precision and sacrifice. Elias volunteered for the most dangerous part of the plan, leading a small strike team aboard Cal's ship to sabotage its core systems. "You don't have to do this," Silvera protested when he told her. "It's too risky. And letting you go alone is safer." Elias countered, raising an eyebrow. "Besides, you've got the harder job, keeping everyone else alive out here." After hours of heated debate, she reluctantly agreed, though her eyes betrayed her worry. As they prepared to launch the assault, she pulled him aside. "Promise me one thing," she said softly. "Come back to me." He nodded, his usual sarcasm replaced by sincerity. "Always." The mission was harrowing. Clad in stolen Zenthari armor, Elias led his team through chaotic corridors filled with enemy soldiers. Every step felt like walking into a trap, every shadow a potential ambush. When they finally reached the engineering bay, time seemed to slow. The core pulsed ominously, surrounded by guards and automated defenses. Working quickly, Elias planted explosives while his team provided cover fire. The sound of blaster shots echoed deafeningly, drowning out all thought except survival. Meanwhile, Silvera fought valiantly in space, coordinating loyalist forces against Cal's fleet. Her leadership inspired even the most skeptical warriors, turning the tide of battle inch by inch. When the signal came that Elias's team had succeeded, she ordered a full retreat, knowing the explosion would cripple Cal's command. Back on the surface, amidst the smoldering ruins of the capital city, Silvera faced a tribunal questioning her right to rule and her choice of consort. Just as tensions reached their peak, Elias interrupted the proceedings, striding into the chamber battered but alive. Ignoring protocol, he addressed the crowd directly. "I didn't save Princess Silvera because of some ancient law or prophecy," he declared, his voice steady despite his exhaustion. "I saved her because she's brave, compassionate, and worth fighting for. And if standing beside her means risking everything, then so be it. Because maybe, just maybe, the galaxy needs someone who believes in something bigger than themselves." His words resonated, swaying even the harshest critics. For the first time, the court erupted in applause, signaling a shift in favor of unity. As Elias took his place beside Silvera, their hands brushing briefly, he knew the hardest battles were behind them, but the greatest challenges still lay ahead. Together, though, they were ready to face whatever came next. On the run and with nowhere to turn, Elias and Silvera sought refuge in an ancient Zenthari temple hidden deep within a field of asteroids. The journey there was perilous, navigating through treacherous space debris while evading Cal's patrols. But once they arrived, the sight took Elias's breath away. The temple was carved into the side of a massive asteroid, its crystalline structure glowing faintly like a beacon in the darkness. Inside, intricate murals depicted celestial events and mythical tales, their colors still vibrant despite centuries of abandonment. "This place is sacred," Silvera explained as they explored the vast halls. "It's where our ancestors recorded their wisdom, and where the origins of the life debt ritual are said to be preserved." Elias raised an eyebrow. "You mean this whole mess might actually have answers here?" She nodded gravely. "If we can decipher the inscriptions, maybe we'll understand why the bond exists, and if there's a way to break it without starting a war." As they delved deeper into the temple, they discovered relics that seemed almost alive, humming softly when touched. One artifact, a shimmering orb suspended in midair, reacted strongly to their presence. When Elias approached it cautiously, tendrils of light wrapped around his hand, pulsing gently before retreating. Silvera gasped. "It recognizes you," she whispered. "The bond. It's more than just tradition. It's tied to something ancient, something cosmic." Elias frowned, uneasy at the thought. "Are you saying this isn't random? That saving you wasn't just luck?" "I don't know anymore," she admitted, her voice tinged with awe. "But look at these carvings. They speak of a prophecy. Two souls from different worlds uniting to restore balance to the galaxy. Could that be us?" The idea sounded absurd to Elias, He wasn't some chosen hero destined for greatness. He was just a pilot who'd made a split-second decision to save someone in need. Yet, as he stood beside Silvera, surrounded by the echoes of her people's history, doubt crept in. Was fate truly guiding them? Their connection deepened during their time in the temple. Days turned into nights as they worked together to translate the inscriptions. Silvera taught Elias about Zenthari culture, sharing stories of her childhood and her dreams of peace between species. In return, Elias opened up about his own life, the loneliness of being a drifter, the thrill of exploring unknown stars. For the first time, neither felt entirely alone. But as their bond grew stronger, so did their uncertainty. Were their feelings genuine, or were they influenced by the mystical forces surrounding them? One evening, as they sat beneath the glow of the temple's central chamber, Elias finally voiced the question weighing on his mind. "Do you think we're falling for each other because of whatever this is?" he asked hesitantly. "Or would we feel this way even without the prophecy?" Silvera looked at him, her golden eyes reflecting both vulnerability and strength. "I don't know," she admitted softly. "But does it matter? What I feel for you feels real, Elias. And right now, that's enough." Her words lingered in the air, filling the silence between them. Elias realized then that no matter how tangled their fates had become, one thing was clear: he cared for her deeply. Whether it was destiny or coincidence, their connection couldn't be denied. Yet, as they prepared to leave the temple, armed with newfound knowledge and resolve, Elias couldn't shake the nagging feeling that their trials were far from over. If the prophecy was true, their union could change the galaxy. But not everyone would welcome such change. As they stepped back into the cold void of space, Elias knew one thing for certain: love might bind them, but survival would test them. The war ended not with a single decisive victory, but with the slow, steady collapse of Cal's rebellion. With his command ship destroyed and his forces in disarray, Cal was captured attempting to flee. His trial was swift and merciless. He was stripped of his titles and exiled to a remote penal colony, never to return. The factions that had once rallied behind him dissolved as hope for peace began to take root. For Elias and Silvera, the aftermath was both triumphant and bittersweet. They stood together on the balcony of the rebuilt royal palace, overlooking Zenthar Prime's capital city as it slowly pieced itself back together. Crystalline spires gleamed under the twin suns, their beauty undiminished by the scars of battle. The streets below buzzed with activity, workers rebuilding, families reuniting, and diplomats from human colonies arriving to negotiate treaties. "It's strange," Elias said, leaning against the railing. "I came here thinking I'd just drop you off and leave. Now look at me. I'm practically running an interstellar diplomacy seminar." Silvera chuckled softly, her golden eyes reflecting the light of the setting suns. "You've done more than anyone could have asked. You didn't just save me, you gave our people a chance to start over." Elias shrugged modestly, though pride flickered in his chest. "Still feels surreal. A guy like me, standing next to a princess. Sounds like the plot of one of those cheesy Hollywoods. But this isn't fiction," Silvera replied, turning to face him. "It's real, and it's because of you that we're here today." As they prepared for their official coronation ceremony, nerves mingled with excitement. The event would mark not only their ascension to the throne, but also the formal union between humanity and the Zenthari, a symbol of unity long thought impossible. Representatives from both species gathered in the Grand Hall, their presence signaling a fragile yet hopeful new era. When the moment came, Elias and Silvera walked side by side down the aisle, their steps synchronized despite their differences. The crowd erupted into cheers as they reached the dais, where Queen Valithra waited to crown them. Her expression was unreadable, but when she placed the ceremonial circlet on Silvera's head, there was a flicker of pride in her eyes, and perhaps even approval for Elias. "Today," Silvera announced to the assembled crowd, her voice ringing clear and strong, "we choose a future where strength is found in diversity, where compassion bridges divides, and where no life is ever seen as lesser because of its origin. Together, we will build a galaxy worth fighting for, not with weapons, but with understanding. Elias added his own words, speaking directly to the humans in attendance. We're not so different, any of us. We all want the same things: to live, to love, to matter. Let this be the beginning of something better. Applause echoed through the chamber, a sound that carried far beyond the walls of the palace. For the first time in what felt like forever, the galaxy seemed full of possibility. Later that night, as they stood alone on the balcony once more, Elias wrapped an arm around Silvera's shoulders. "So, now what?" he asked, grinning. She leaned into him, smiling. "Now, we rule." Together, they gazed out at the stars, knowing their journey was only beginning. The road ahead would be challenging, but as long as they faced it side by side, they were ready for anything. In each other, they had found not just a partner, but a reason to believe in a brighter tomorrow, for themselves and for the galaxy. The days following their audience with the royal court only grew tenser. Lord Kale wasted no time rallying opposition against Silvera and Elias. His rhetoric was sharp and persuasive, painting Elias as an opportunistic outsider who had manipulated the life debt ritual for personal gain. "How can we trust this human?" he declared during a public assembly. "He is not one of us. He does not share our values or understand our ways." Silvera tried to counter his arguments, but her uncle's influence ran deep. Many in the court began to question whether allowing a human into their sacred traditions would weaken the empire's integrity. Whispers spread like wildfire, fueled by fear and prejudice. Even some of Silvera's allies started to waver under the pressure. Elias could feel the hostility mounting. Everywhere he went, eyes followed him. Some curious, others hostile. Guards shadowed his every move, ostensibly for his protection, but he couldn't shake the feeling they were more like prison wardens. The weight of being constantly watched wore on him, and he longed for the freedom of his ship and the open stars. One evening, as he wandered the palace gardens to clear his head, Silvera joined him. She looked tired, her usual confidence dimmed by the storm brewing around them. "Kel won't stop until he ruins us both," she admitted, her voice heavy with frustration. "He's using you to undermine my claim to the throne." "Then why don't we leave?" Elias suggested impulsively. "We don't need this mess. Let's just take off and figure things out later." Silvera shook her head sadly. "If I run now, it will prove Kel right. It will show weakness, not just for me, but for all who believe in unity between species." Her determination stirred something in Elias. For all his complaints, he admired her resolve. She wasn't fighting just for herself. She was fighting for something bigger. Still, he couldn't ignore the danger closing in. That night, an explosion rocked the palace. Flames erupted from one of the outer wings, sending guards scrambling. Chaos erupted as alarms blared and servants fled in panic. Elias bolted upright in his quarters, heart pounding. Before he could process what was happening, Silvera burst through the door, her face pale but resolute. "It's Kel," she said urgently. "He's trying to kill us." Without hesitation, they grabbed what little they could carry and slipped into the shadows. Smoke filled the corridors as they navigated hidden passageways known only to Silvera. Behind them, shouts echoed, guards searching for intruders, though Elias suspected they weren't the real targets. They finally reached a secret exit leading to the city below. As they emerged into the cool night air, Elias turned to Silvera. "Now what?" "We find proof," she said firmly. "Kale thinks he's won, but he's made mistakes. If we can expose his treachery, we might still turn the tide." For the first time since arriving on Zenthar Prime, Elias felt a flicker of hope. They were fugitives now, hunted by those who should have protected them. But as they disappeared into the bustling streets of the capital, hand in hand, Elias realized something important. He wasn't running from Silvera's world anymore. He was running with her. And that made all the difference. The alien woman, Princess Silvera, as she introduced herself, recovered slowly under Elias's care. She was quiet at first, observing him with sharp, intelligent eyes that seemed to pierce through his rough exterior. Her presence filled the small quarters of the Starling with an otherworldly energy, and Elias couldn't help but feel out of place in his own ship. He wasn't used to having passengers, let alone one who carried herself like royalty. Silvera didn't speak much about what had happened to her ship or why she'd been drifting alone in space. Instead, she asked questions about Elias, where he came from, how long he'd been flying, and whether humans were always so reckless when it came to helping strangers. Elias chuckled nervously at her last question. "I'm not exactly known for making smart decisions," he admitted, "but leaving someone to die, that's not my style." Her expression softened, though there was still a shadow of something unreadable in her gaze. "You have no idea what you've done," she said quietly. "Saving me. It wasn't just an act of kindness. It's created a bond between us, a life debt." Elias frowned. "A what?" She explained patiently, her voice steady despite the weight of her words. In Xanthari culture, saving someone's life was more than a gesture. It was sacred. The person saved owed their savior everything, bound by tradition to serve them or repay the debt in some way. And if the roles were reversed, as they were now, the savior became equally entangled. According to Xanthari law, Elias had two options: either pledge himself to her service or marry her. "What?" Elias nearly dropped the wrench he'd been holding. "That's insane. I didn't sign up for any of this." Silvera raised a hand to calm him. "I understand your shock. Believe me, I never expected this either. But these are our customs, and my people will expect you to honor them." "But I'm not even Xanthari," Elias protested, pacing the cramped cabin. "Why should their rules apply to me?" "Because you saved a Xanthari princess," she replied simply, "and because ignoring the life debt would bring shame upon both of us, and possibly start a war." Her words hit him like a punch to the gut. War? Over something as simple as rescuing someone. It sounded absurd, yet the gravity of her tone made it clear she wasn't exaggerating. For all his bravado, Elias knew he couldn't brush this off. As days passed, Silvera grew stronger, and their conversations grew deeper. She told him fragments of her story, how she'd fled her homeworld to escape an arranged marriage meant to strengthen political ties within the empire, how she'd hoped to find freedom among the stars, only to end up stranded and near death. There was pain behind her words, but also resilience. Elias found himself admiring her strength, even as he struggled to wrap his head around the mess he'd landed in. One evening, as they shared a meal in the cockpit, Elias decided to confront the elephant in the room. "Look, Silvera," he began, choosing his words carefully. "I don't want to force you into anything. If going back means dealing with all this debt stuff, maybe we can figure something else out." She looked at him, her golden eyes glimmering faintly in the dim light. "You're kinder than most humans I've heard about," she said softly. "But kindness won't change reality. My people won't see it as optional. And neither will yours, once they learn of this." Her words hung heavy in the air. Elias stared out at the endless void beyond the viewport, realizing for the first time just how far-reaching the consequences of his actions might be. Saving her hadn't just changed her life, it had changed his forever. And deep down, he wondered if part of him didn't mind. The fragile peace Elias and Silvera had found in the temple shattered the moment they returned to reality. News of their escape had spread like wildfire, igniting outrage across Xanthar Prime. Lord Kale seized the opportunity, declaring them traitors who had abandoned their duties to the Empire. "They seek to destroy our traditions," he thundered during a public address, his voice dripping with venom. "If we allow this union, it will be the end of everything we hold sacred." But Kale wasn't the only threat. Back on Earth, rumors of a human Xanthari bond sparked panic among humanity's leaders. To many, the idea of aligning with an alien species, especially one as powerful and feared as the Xanthari, was unthinkable. Military fleets began mobilizing near Zenthori borders, preparing for conflict. The galaxy teetered on the brink of war, with Elias and Silvera caught squarely in the middle. Silvera watched the chaos unfold from their hidden base, her expression unreadable, but her fists clenched tightly. "This is exactly what Cal wants," she said bitterly. "Fear and division. He's using us to justify his rebellion. And now humans are playing right into his hands." Elias paced the room, frustration boiling over. "So what do we do? Every move we make seems to make things worse." "We fight back," Silvera replied firmly. "Not with weapons, but with truth. We expose Cal's schemes and show both our peoples that unity isn't weakness, it's strength." It was a bold plan, but risky. They needed proof of Cal's treachery, something undeniable enough to sway even the most skeptical minds. That meant infiltrating his stronghold, a heavily fortified fortress orbiting the planet's largest moon. It was suicide, but neither of them saw another way. Under the cover of darkness, they launched their mission. Using stolen codes and disguises crafted hastily from scavenged materials, they slipped past Cal's defenses. Inside, the fortress buzzed with activity, guards patrolling every corridor. Elias marveled at Silvera's composure. She moved with precision, her training as a princess-turned-fugitive shining through. Together, they reached the central archives, where damning evidence awaited. As Silvera downloaded files onto a data crystal, Elias kept watch, his heart pounding. Suddenly, alarms blared. "We've been spotted," he hissed. "Almost done," Silvera responded, her fingers flying over the console. Guards stormed the room moments later, weapons drawn. Outnumbered and cornered, Elias stepped forward, raising his hands. "Wait. Listen to me. You're being used. Cal's manipulating you all." To his surprise, some of the guards hesitated. One stepped forward, lowering his weapon slightly. "Why should we believe you?" Before Elias could answer, Silvera spoke up, her voice steady and commanding. "Because I'm your princess, and I won't let him tear our people apart. Look at these files. They prove Cal orchestrated the attack on the palace and framed Captain Drake." The guards exchanged uneasy glances. While not all were convinced, enough doubt crept in to buy them time. With the guards distracted, Elias and Silvera made their escape, narrowly avoiding capture. Back at their hideout, they broadcast the evidence across both human and Zenthari channels. The response was immediate. Outrage turned against Cal, while calls for peace grew louder. For the first time, hope flickered in the shadows of war. But as Elias held Silvera close that night, relief mingling with exhaustion, he knew the hardest battles were yet to come. Unity wouldn't happen overnight, and neither would trust. Still, as long as they faced it together, he believed they could weather whatever storms lay ahead.